Hi, this is a request I'm submitting to San Diego Superior Court, specifically the person or department responsible for records management. I don't know who that is because it wasn't listed on your website, but possibly it's Jake Pazan, your Chief Information Officer. But if not, I ask that Michael Rade, the Executive Officer of your organization, field this and forward it to the right person. This concerns the criminalization of my successful mental health treatment program by Family Healthcare Centers of San Diego after the mysterious disappearance of my psychiatrist, Dr. Edward Urbe, from that organization in July of 2020. And the fraudulent claim by the man who is now the chief of psychiatry, Joe Sepulveda, that he was providing me with treatment when I suddenly went off and began making violent threats. It's not true. I've never made a violent threat in my life. They are lying. The actual threat I made was to report Joe Sepulveda to the California Board of Medicine, and more specifically, to ban him from access to my medical records, which I thought at that time was my right. Turns out it's not. Turns out that's against their culture. And in addition to filing this fraudulent claim, fraudulently claiming he was my psychiatrist, he also fabricated more than a half dozen different new psychiatric conditions, just like that. Some of what I'm going to say might be offensive to you if you work in the court system, and I'm sorry about that. But I'm going to be referring this to as your system, and specifically the attorneys as your attorneys, because it is your system. And the team of attorneys that Family Healthcare Centers of San Diego used, they were all government funded with apparently an unlimited budget. There's a whole team of them, at least 3. As a result, I've lost some of my most basic rights as an American, including, of course, my Second Amendment rights. I'm now considered too dangerous to own a gun, even though never mind that I've never owned a gun in my life. Wouldn't know what to do with a gun if I had one. And to a certain extent, I was even anti-gun before that happened. This changed me in a lot of ways, including my politics. I've also lost a lot of my other rights, including my First Amendment rights. I certainly can't speak freely anymore, especially on gun control issues. What am I supposed to say? Let's keep guys like me off the streets? And I can no longer even travel freely. I can't, for example, ride my bicycle around Mission Bay because of the juxtaposition of the Family Healthcare Centers of San Diego that blocks off anything within 1,000 feet of it. And I can't get on an airplane, as I understand it, or I have to be the last person to board, just in case the liar who did this to me decides to take a flight that day. So I've been angry for the last 3 years. What happened to me was an outrage, and what I have learned along the way is that this system is rigged. I'm not going to tell the whole story here. I'll produce other videos for that. Just accept that it's one of the most horrible things that's ever happened in my life. It's not just the courts that are rigged. Every single government agency I've tried to contact to address this issue, every system that's supposed to regulate and monitor abuses in the medical profession, that includes the California Board of Medicine, government agencies that are supposed to protect our rights, specifically HIPAA regulations, and agencies that are supposed to protect us from fraud. They've all fallen short or failed completely in this regards. These systems all become all but useless when mental health is involved. I learned the hard way that the stigma of mental health or mental illness is real, but it doesn't come from society. I have ADHD. I was correctly diagnosed and successfully treated by Dr. Urbe before I was criminalized. And I can tell you that the rest of society, they've either been indifferent or somewhat supportive, but the mental health industry and the courts and legal system, once you have the stigma of mental illness, that's it. It's instant, and it may be permanent. I'll also be explaining how the system is rigged and also how it became that way. I have a graduate degree in public policy. I know a lot about organizational theory. I've worked side by side with McKinsey, the consulting organizations. I've spent a lifetime in and out of organizations by some unknowable combination of my condition, ADHD, and my chosen profession, contract management. I've worked in literally hundreds of organizations. I've seen them from the inside and out, and I know what's gone wrong with Family Healthcare Centers of San Diego. I do not know just that it is a criminal organization now. I know how it became one. I'll also be explaining how justice is impossible in this case. Not just an unlikely, impossible. I've looked at it from every single conceivable angle, and this system is rigged. Um, I mean, just to give you one reason, nothing can ever happen to the people who did this. I mean, hopefully there will be someday be some criminal complaints, although that's suffered a huge setback, as I'll be explaining in a minute. Um, but also all the people who did this, no matter what happens, they will get paid. It'll cost hundreds or thousands of hours of my time, but every single person involved will get paid. And if somebody is found to have done something wrong, they won't have to pay a dime even then. The government-funded insurance companies will take care of it. That's called moral hazard. It's just one reason justice is impossible, but there are many. About 2 weeks ago, I made a trip to the records division of San Diego Superior Court in downtown San Diego to get on all the records you have on file for this case. But what I wanted most was the transcripts of the actual hearing. I already have the restraining order, the off-the-scale lies that Joe Sepulveda told in that. Perjury all over the place. Every word or sentence in that document is a lie. But I wanted the actual transcripts, the minutes of the actual court hearing, because in addition to lying right to Judge Mayer's face, he made some just outrageous, unbelievable statements that were completely accepted by the courts. What I got instead of the transcripts or the minutes of the meeting was this. It's 2 pages and it says nothing. It just has a list of some other documents, some emails I sent, which they decided, should be interpreted as, strong-worded language means you're planning a mass murder in San Diego, apparently. But I need the voice. I need that. I need the actual minutes. If you didn't make any minutes, this was an online hearing. It was during the pandemic. So there should be a recording of that. The person didn't know anything about that at the courts, but I need that recording. And for a number of reasons, some of the really outrageous things, bizarre things he said in the session, he claimed to the judge that I'm the most dangerous person he's ever met in his entire career. It's the first job he's ever had in his life, by the way. Family Healthcare Centers only hires people just out of college, and they only promote from within. That doesn't give you a little hint of the problem there. Then I'm not sure what else will, but that's just one of the problems. I'm the most dangerous person he's ever met in his entire career, which at that time had been 9 years at that one organization. Wow, if I'm the most dangerous person he's ever met, I think that guy needs to get out a little bit more. He also claimed in court, and this is so outrageous and unbelievable and scary, he claimed in court that he could tell just by looking at me that I'm a drug addict, or maybe that wasn't the exact term. I just said substance user. They love using that, or something to that effect. But he did say that just by looking at me part. That should have shocked the judge. What do you mean just by looking at him? These are the same guys that you cut a contract with for your new care courts designed to control the homeless population. And if you can just declare psychiatric conditions, as this guy did to me, then there's a real problem. San Diego has a real problem. He also claimed, just outrageous, that I spent half the session begging him for medications. That is such a bald-faced lie. I don't even know where to start to refute it. It's just he just makes stuff up. But I knew what this guy was about before the session, before I even went in with him, before the meeting. I shouldn't call it a session because it was not. It was 10 minutes. He agrees with that. It was also billing fraud, by the way, because he charged the government 50 minutes. But it was not. It was supposed to be just discussing continuity of care. But he said that I spent half the time begging for drugs. I did not. That never happened. I was careful with my wording during that entire meeting. I'll go into the whole story of that. But that's when I lost my freedom. I interrupted at that point because the workforce restraining order system they used, they knew what system to use. That's usually used for employees, but apparently they knew that they would really do a number on me. He gets to speak last, and so the last thing he said was that statement about how I was begging him for drugs. I said that's not true, and because I interrupted, the gavel came down, and I was declared, a criminal in your worldview, in your system. I have ADHD, but even a person without this condition would have interrupted in that case. That is an outrageous lie. It's insulting. It's a bald-faced lie, and he made it right in court, and he said it. I did my research before the meeting, and I knew some of the programs. He's very much into the forced urine testing program. It's called contingency planning or contingency management, something like that. A horrible program where you take urine tests from junkies, and then you give them prizes like donuts and movie tickets. I'll be telling you more about that. He couldn't get government funding for it at that time, so he had private funding, and that was one of the programs they were implementing there. I don't want to go into that too much here. The important thing is I need that recording. It took me 3 years to get my psychiatric records, and the number of lies on them are just shocking. And I'm going to say without a script here that this has now taken another even darker turn. It turns out that Family Healthcare Centers is framing my real psychiatrist, Joe Sepulveda, Edward Urbe, framing him, not just false accusing him, but framing him of some kind of criminal activity, and I am involved. This is at Secretary of State, Attorney General Rob Bonita's office right now. Very weak case. There's patient A and patient B. I'm patient B. I had just talked to the medical board praising Dr. Urbe, and that wasn't even considered. Dr. Urbe will not lie. He's the polar opposite of Joe Sepulveda, who is a pathological liar. Dr. Urbe always tells the truth, and yet they're convicting him for correctly diagnosing and successfully treating my ADHD. There's more lies than I can even count that have been made here by family healthcare centers. It is a culture of lies. The way I like to explain it to people is the second most important thing you need to know about family healthcare centers of San Diego is that it's a culture of liars. They lie about everything. But the first most important thing you need to know is they always will have someone to blame. And what's going on now is an extreme example of this. They're looking for someone else to blame for their own behavior, their own incompetence, their own lying and dishonesty, and I have to get to the bottom of it. The first thing is to get the actual recording of what Joe Sepulveda said in that meeting, and we can take it from there. I will be either making a video or writing a letter or calling Attorney General Bonita sometime this week. It's probably not going to be today. In the meantime, if you can help me get the recording of that session, I would gratefully appreciate it. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your attention.